Today we have a privilege and an honor to visit with Gus Pederson. Gus was a prisoner of war in World War II. His home is in Barnesville, Minnesota. He's lived there all his life. He served in World War II, was taken a prisoner. Following the war, he returned to Barnesville. And today we're going to visit with him and find out how his journey in life has gone, and particularly his experiences in the war, prison war camp, and so on. And so you just start right in, Gus, and tell us about where you were born and so on, and then finally you'll end up telling us how you won the war, see?
Yeah, we helped win the war, all right. I was born on the 8th of June in 1919 on my parents' farm in Tansum Township in Clay County.
That's just outside of Moorhead, then, between Moorhead and Ferguson.
Yeah, that's only about 30 miles from Moorhead, or a little less. And my parents were Emil and Elmer Pederson. And I attended school in two one-room schoolhouses, District 45 and District 39. And I graduated from Barnesville High School in 1935. And then there was a few years there where I was prospecting, I guess. But on 27th of November 1941, Jean Stanley and Gus Pederson got married. And we lived with my folks until we were drafted. The news on December the 7th, 1941 was disappointing, I guess. My wife and I had decided that things looked like we were no way of my not going into the service. So we decided to get married and grab what time we had. And I guess that was the 7th that war was declared on both Germany and Russia. I received my greetings from Uncle Sam that the president wanted me to help him win the war.
Where did you go then? Where were they, when they drafted you then, where did you go to? Right?
I went to Fort Snelling first, Minnesota.
How long were you there?
Oh, less than a week, I think.
I see. Just, yeah.
And then they put us on a troop train and sent us to Camp Cook, California.
Where is that located from, say, San Francisco or Los Angeles, or the southern part, or?
No, it's about midway in between, I guess, San Francisco and Los Angeles.
Right along the coast.
Right 3 miles off the coast. It was it was a sand dune, really. But that's where we took our basic training, and we did get our 13 weeks of basic training. And then they sent us, supposed to be desert maneuvers, but we went out in the desert and...
Where's that out? California there? California, Arizona?
Down near Blythe, the Indio Desert Center.
I was stationed at Blythe one time.
Oh, yeah?
So I know.
And it got terribly hot. I know one of the staff sergeants was selling everybody outside on the double, he says. And a great big colonel says, "Just a minute, Sergeant. We don't do anything on the double here. Take your men over in the shade and have them sit down." They had a Quonset with a shade, and they were keeling over like flies, doing nothing out there. It was 120-some degrees out this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hot. It was terribly hot. But we were getting acclimated to it. The one thing that it did do, it cured athletes' foot walking barefooted in that sand.
Where'd you go then after you got your desert training there?
Well, from there we went, loaded everything on flat cars, and we struck off for Camp Cook, California. No. We struck off for names escaped me.
Was that on the East Coast, Virginia?
Yeah, in A.P. Hill, Virginia. A.P. Hill, I guess, had owned an awful lot of land that we weren't too far from Richmond and over in that neck of the woods. And we were there.
Were you in the Army now, still in the Army, or in the field artillery?
Still the field artillery. As of that time, I don't know that we were attached to anything. When we originally started out in Camp Cook, we were part of the 5th Armored Division, but we were severed from that. So we wound up going, we went to Camp A.P. Hill, and then from there we went to a camp in New Jersey, Camp Kilmer. And we were there for probably 2 weeks or so, and there was all kinds of talk in the air. Nobody knew where they were heading from, and everybody had some different ideas, but we got transported to Staten Island, New York, and struck off. They didn't even tell us when we were going, when we were loading, where we were going.
That's on a troop transport then you got on?
Yeah, it was a scow, really. It had been used for a pleasure trip just a few miles off from. It didn't have a deep enough bottom. We really got a buggy ride in that thing. And I was down on D deck, and there was very little air down there. And anybody that's been on a troop train back or ship, I think that you were about 2 feet below the guy above you on canvas. And there was an awful lot of stomachs that got squeamish. We spent over 3 weeks getting to, we wound up that we got off at Casablanca, North Africa.
That's in Morocco.
Morocco, yeah.
North.
And really the only thing you did was train dry runs. You go out and shoot your cannon without ammunition and that kind of stuff, lay out.
How much size cannon did you have then?
We had a 105 howitzer.
Mounted?
Yeah, it was mounted on a medium tank that didn't have a top. And it had a 50 caliber machine gun on the turret on the thing, on the skate mount. And I think there was about 9 or 10 of us in the section, gun section. I was in the 3rd gun section. And we would go out and it wound up that we were the first ones that could get set up.
In the field.
In the field. But we did start combat or getting into combat early that spring.
What year was that now? That was in 43, I suppose.
Yeah, that was in 43.
43, yeah. In North Africa there.
In North Africa, and we chased Rommel all over creation. But he finally escaped from there and went into Sicily, and about a month after the African campaign was over, we got loaded up and put in, well, we headed for Sicily.
Now that's a large island right outside of Italy. It's the toe of Italy.
Right outside of Italy, yes. It's only about 2 miles across the Strait of Messina. And we basically had everything going our way there, according to my thinking, because the Germans were backing up and backing up.
Were you firing on the Germans in Italy then?
Oh, yes, yeah.
And you still had that there tank?
That was the ungodliest ground I ever tried to dig a slit trench in.
Sandy or rocky?
Rocky. I know there was one time that I decided I couldn't go any further to hit solid rock. But when a barrage came on, started hitting all around me, I found out that big rock could be taken out of there too. Darn near as big as I was, but I got down deeper.
Now you were in Italy now. You had made the invasion, or were you still in Sicily?
We were in Sicily,
oh,
yeah.
And the Germans, they were firing from Italy then over?
No, they were
still in
just ahead of us. We hadn't quite gotten them out. Because I was taken prisoner. Well, it actually happened that I have always said that there was competition between the English and the French and the Americans, and they were afraid somebody else was going to get to the Strait of Messina first.
That's where you had to get to cross into Italy.
Yeah, when we got orders to make a small amphibious landing
in Italy.
No, this was still in Sicily.
Oh, still.
Behind the German lines, and we did that once, and we surprised them and held them until the main force came from behind, and then that evening we went back a few mile or so and rested, and we rested all of the next day. But then they loaded us up again to do the same trick. And they had aerial observation on us. They were waiting for us. We did get off the boat and with our equipment and stuff. And our mission was supposed to be to knock down a tower, a stone tower across right next to a road. And we carried armored piercing ammunition all the way through the African campaign. But when that was done and over with, we turned it in, and we never got issued any more. And we tried the best we could with. There were 3 types of shells. There was high explosive or time, or they had the armored piercing, which is supposed to pierce and then bust. And we didn't have that. We did manage to knock a little hole in the thing, but we couldn't knock it down. And
what size of gun was that again?
105 howitzer. And
Was that was mounted now on that?
yeah, it was mounted on the tank.
Was that tank? Was that did that have wheels or tracks?
It tracks.
Tracks.
It didn't have any top on it, you understand?
Yeah.
And well, they brought back some heavy artillery and they busted our out the top just like walnuts. And we had a huge mountain to one side, the ocean to the other, and the German on both sides. So, in other words, they just ran over us. And we were disorganized, let's face it. We were artillerymen that weren't too efficient infantry troops. But it was the captain that surrendered us.
Now the Germans were all around then, by then.
Yes, yeah.
Now how many men were surrendered? Did that captain surrender?
Not too terribly many. I don't really have a count, probably less than 20.
How did he surrender? Do you remember what the procedure was?
He said, "Kamerad." And
raised the flag then or something?
well, we had to all stand up and hand and ho, hands up,
Yeah.
you know, when we were searched and
The Germans searched you then.
searched us, and then we went along with them.
Germans took you.
Yeah, well, we had to hang on to a truck or some cockeyed thing, and when they took us across on the ferry
To Italy.
to Italy.
Now what date was this about? Or that was in 43, wasn't it?
It was in 43. I would.
Spring or early in the year.
It was August something or another.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Terrifically warm too at that time of the year. I had. Well, I couldn't see through glasses covered with perspiration, so I had taken them out and put them in my pack. And I wound up going as a prisoner without glasses. Fortunately, I suffered more from. It wasn't that I couldn't see, but I got headaches and I faced sharp lights and stuff like that.
Without glasses?
Without glasses, yeah. And,
Did you get glasses in prison camp or any time?
no, I didn't. Well, I guess I didn't put up a fuss either, but I know there was one fellow that was taken prisoner that they'd pulled all his teeth.
Germans did.
Germans did, and I saw him when we were liberated. They'd given him plates.
Well, they did.
I was really surprised that they'd do that for him, but they'd given him, he had uppers and lowers.
He'd been in the hospital then maybe or somewhere, I suppose. Or...
Well, of course, he wasn't in with the group that
No.
I got in with, so I don't know that, but I know that well, it was one thing that they had a gracious plenty of was fleas.
Lots of fleas.
And they have teeth, I think. Sure felt like it. And
Now you'd crossed from Sicily into Italy now then,
yeah.
and you were being marched someplace or taken someplace.
Well, from Italy, there they loaded us on the 40 and 8 boxcars, and I think it was somewhere in between 10 days and 2 weeks that we rambled along on. They'd open up the door once in a while, and everybody got out and went to the bathroom right alongside those that hadn't gone to the bathroom inside. Some of them couldn't help it if they were loose. Why, it was kind of a gory mess.
What about food? Did you have any food on the train?
Oh, we probably got about 2 slices of that German bread each day. There was a lack of it, and of course there wasn't any water to get until they stopped at some station, and you had to be about like a camel, I guess, drink as much as you could.
Well, now how many was Was it just one boxcar on this train, or were there other number of boxcars?
A whole load of
Prisoners.
Yeah.
American, or they were all Americans?
All Americans.
Yeah. You were going somewhere up to Germany then, I suppose.
Yeah, we went through the Brennan Pass, and we went through Naples. There was a tunnel in there that we were kind of glad when we got through, because people had lived in it.
People were living in the tunnel?
Yeah, they were afraid of Air Force. You boys have been mean to them, I guess. Anyhow, the aroma was about the same way in there as it was in the boxcar, because they couldn't go all the length. Oh, this is a mile or two long.
Did you march in there or go on the train?
We were on a train.
On a train.
But, well, we traveled off and on. I guess we were sidetracked every once in a while, too. You never know what the heck.
No.
Had to be, because they were meeting other trains and stuff.
You were on your way to a camp now then?
Yeah, they were.
German camp, prisoner of war camp.
We finally wound up after about 10 days or 2 weeks in 7A, they called it. I have no idea where it was. And we were there for 2 or 3 days, and possibly a week, and then we were shipped to 2B, which is over in the northern, or up near the Baltic anyway.
Northeast part of Germany.
Yeah.
You didn't go to Poland, did you?
No, we weren't in Poland.
You stayed in Germany, yeah.
As far as I know,
You weren't too far from Danzig or Peenemünde and those places then. The water, the Baltic.
I was told we were only about 90 miles from Danzig, which, well, we could certainly hear the rumble of the bombs when they were bombing Danzig, when, before the Russians got there.
Now, what kind of a camp was that now that you went to there?
Well, it was a regular
guard towers and barracks?
Yeah.
Were the barracks built on the ground or stilts?
On the ground.
On the ground. How many in the room, or how many in that barracks?
Oh, I would presume that there was probably a couple of hundred with 2 stories.
And that would be called barracks or block?
Well, they had wooden bunks and straw ticks.
Lice?
I never did get lousy, but boy, the fleece they had.
Well,
they had overflowing bunch of fleece.
Yeah.
And they didn't seem to bother everybody the same night. They seemed like they went from bed sack to back sack and attacked you in an army.
Well, some people were allergic to those things, They had suffered quite a bit.
I guess that what I had done, they were biting me on the legs, and I was kicking them off with my feet, and I got infection in my legs. But then there was another German or another prisoner that had the same problem. So they took him to a doctor, and they came back with some powder or some sulfanolamide or something. I don't know what it was. And then what we had to use for bandages was some mighty poor paper. And of course that didn't stay there very long. Not when you were out working, but...
What about the food then? What kind of food did you have in this place?
Well, it was some pretty thin soup and about 3 slices of German bread.
Did you get any Red Cross parcels or anything like that?
We didn't get any until we got put out in commandos. Out in the farm there, we'd almost averaged every other week, I guess. And there was quite a bunch in those Red Cross packages too. There was 2 pounds of corned beef and a can of Spam, and
You lived pretty good then with those Red Cross parcels.
we lived high on the hog.
What about, you say a commando? What do you mean by that?
That's what they called these farms that are
Oh, I see.
the groups that were taken out. They were called commandos.
Did you go to a farm then each day and come back again, or how?
No, we had a house on this farm that we, well, they had 13 Ukrainians in the basement.
They were prisoners then?
They were civilian prisoners.
Russian, yeah, okay.
And they had 5 Frenchmen that were military or army men, but they'd been there so long that they almost were Germans. They could speak pretty fluent German. But there was one thing that we had to do in order to speak to each other. We had to try to speak German, because that was one thing that all knew a little of. You know, we couldn't speak Russian, we couldn't speak Polish, but that farm wasn't too bad a place.
What'd you do on this farm then? Did you go out in the morning to the field or something, or come back, or?
Every day we went out about 7 o'clock in the morning, and we got back in again about 7. But there was a half an hour break in the forenoon, and an hour and a half off at noon, and then another half an hour. So, see, that'd be over 2 hours that we weren't working.
Now the Germans, were they German guards then with you?
Well, we only had 1 guard on that.
Well, who told you what to do?
Well, they had a foreman that came, and he knew that, or it didn't take long to find out that I had come from a farm and could get manure to hang on a fork and stuff like that. So I got sent off quite frequently with 4 or 5 Germans on a smaller detail. And of course, a guard couldn't divide himself up into any pieces, but I suppose they were responsible for me. But we were 1,000 miles from the nearest front. There was no sense in trying to.
Couldn't escape. I mean, you could escape, but you couldn't get anywhere.
Because I wouldn't be afraid of the German civilians at that time. But it would be Hitler's youth that would have gotten you, or even them little tots that were 10, 12 years old were drilling with wooden guns, and they were patriotic as the very dickens, and they wouldn't thought much of doing away with a Yankee. No, on that farm they raised
Now, how long did you stay on that farm?
17 months about.
Yeah. Did you have Sundays off, or church, or anything like that?
Well, yes, we had every Sunday off, and every holiday there was off. At Christmas, I think we had 3 days off.
You just stayed in the barracks then?
Yeah, we got on each other's nerves then.
How did that sleeping conditions? Now, did you sleep in individual bunks, or did you have a?
Yeah, we each had a bunk, and there was another bunk on top of it.
Yeah. What is it, a straw mattress or paper mattress?
It was a straw tick filled with straw.
Yeah.
And whenever the fleece got too bad, they took it over in the horse barn, dumped it, and filled it up with something more. And we did suffer from fleece, but how I got by without getting lousy, I don't know, but I never did.
How about the cold? And
the weather, well, it was...
Did you have heat in the barracks, sir?
Yes, we had a couple of cement brick.
Yeah.
They burnt underneath, and the brick would get warm, and we were friends with the old. Fact is, this house that we lived in wasn't far from the woodshed, and the old fellow had come holler, "Come schnell, Meister is weg. Come quick," he said, "the boss was gone. Come and get some wood." 4 or 5 was getting an armful. We had it warmer in there than I think the guy that owned the establishment.
Did you have any doctors or dentists there to help you or go to? Or
Well, not really that I know of. I know they took this one individual off, like I said, that got medicine for inflammation on the legs. And when we were marching, one of the boys got pneumonia, and we were getting cigarettes. I should probably get into telling about that, because
the cigarettes come in the Red Cross parcel then?
they came in a Red Cross parcel, but I had written home and asked Jean to send me cigarettes. And she sent $3 to Liggett and Myers, and I got 3 cartons of Camels for $3.
Did they send them to you then? Did Liggett and Myers send them to you? Or
Yeah, they got sent over there. I didn't miss. That's one of the funny parts about the deal, that they didn't seem to. The Germans seem to abide by the Geneva Conference. But I guess the ones that were in a big lager, like maybe you were, you didn't get any Red Cross parcels, did you?
Well, we did, but it's pretty. You see, if you have 10,000 men, it gets pretty thin. You know?
Yeah.
And then how many you get.
Somebody else getting their fingers into it too.
Yeah.
But no, we actually.
Now, did they? How were the guards? Did you have good ones, bad ones, rough ones, or
Well,
did you sort of just kind of get used
the
to
fellow we had would get quite angry, but he probably had a right to. I felt that I had lost my rights, and I did what I was asked to do, and I was never abused. A few of them got punched with the gun barrel, but they were sassing back, or, they asked for it, in my thinking, that we didn't have freedom anymore. We were prisoners. I never got abused.
How did you get from your barracks out to the farm where you worked, or?
Well, that was.
Or wasn't
This
what?
house was right in the town. It was about a 1-street town.
Oh.
And usually they loaded us in wagons and hauled us out to where we were working. We picked potatoes. There they had, there's something like a grain tank. They were built narrow on the bottom, and
Yeah.
And they picked potatoes in smaller baskets and dumped it into bigger baskets, and then the driver and another fellow would come by and they would dump them in the wagon. And quite frequently when they were doing that, I worked. They dug about a half a meter deep and a meter wide
Hole in the ground?
hole in the ground, and then they put inclines underneath the wagon wheels, and over it went. Then we had a long piece of tree that wasn't, I don't know if it was ironwood or what it was, but they'd put it underneath the axle through the spoke, and then they'd bid the horses go forward and two or three was to tip it back over again. It was chained on together. And then they'd heap the potatoes up into a pyramid, and the first thing they put on them was bales of straw, rye straw. And then it was yeah, they put on quite a bunch of dirt on that.
On top of all of it. How many potatoes were in that pile? Bushels, would you say? 50 or 100 or?
Oh, you probably had piles that had 1,000 bushels of potatoes.
Oh, they did, yeah. And those were used and dug up in winter.
They got
summer, yeah.
sent off by rail to feed
I see.
Germans and everybody else. So it was even along. You could stand two side by side, and they shoveled them into wagons again. Good heavens, those potatoes were so beat up by the time they got on the plate that I don't think there was any skin left on them.
How? What were the crops that they had there? Where you get on these farms?
Well, it was mostly potatoes and rye on the place. That we had rye bread, you know, and potatoes, and then.
Have any cabbage?
Well, only in the garden, I guess.
Yeah.
But they would raise cow turnips.
Now those were fed to the cows, or was it just after?
Yeah, you planted a plant, and usually when it was drizzling and raining a little bit, you'd poke a hole and stick the plant in and pack it down. They grew up almost as big as your head on top of the ground.
Oh, I see.
Root underneath, and they were used a wooden drag, pull them loose out of the ground with, and then you speared them with a 4-tine fork and banged them into this wagon, that potato wagon I talked about. And they were
those pulled by horses or oxen?
No, they had horses.
Horses, yeah.
They had over 40 horses on this place.
Say, do you have any trucks?
No, it was...
or tractors?
Yeah, there was one that burnt benzene, and then another one that charcoal.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that, those charcoal
trucks.
That is an interesting truck. Or a tractor.
That popped along about like a 2-cylinder John Deere, I guess. But ever so often they had to tear it apart and clean all the sticky stuff.
How was your health now when you were there? Did you get any letters from home?
Oh, I got... yeah, I think that I just about every month got a couple of letters, or 2 or 3.
You stayed there in that camp then for quite a while.
Oh yeah, I was in the farm in Germany for 17 months and a prisoner for 20. But I mean, I had I had this cigarette habit. And then I wound up without any cigarettes, and the first thing I asked for was my wife to send some cigarettes. And she sent 3 cartons a month, and then some months you probably got 10 packages. And I wasn't more than 1 pack a day smoker, so I said to my partner, I said that we're going to hang on to these cigarettes. They're apt to come in handy after a while. Fact is, when we started walking, I think I had 7 cartons of cigarettes that I was carrying and throwing food away. Raisins and that kind of stuff that was too heavy. And guys they started out to begin with, they were buying, paying a whole bunch from the Germans for eggs and stuff. We waited until they ran out, and then I said, we're not going to get hungry or you starve to death to begin with. It's going to be later on that we need something. So we wound up trading off cigarettes. In fact, one of our buddies got pneumonia, and I think we had to give 3 or 4 cartons of cigarettes to make sure that he was taken to the dispensary. But they had done it. I heard from him after he got back to the U.S. He was from Wenatchee, Washington.
Well, now you were in this camp and this working on the farm. What made you move then, or what happened when you started moving? You say you started marching or
Well,
moving.
the guard came one morning and told everybody to get ready to go.
Yeah.
And we marched. Well, like I
Could
said,
you hear the Russians then? Could you hear the
yeah, you could hear the boom of the big guns.
Russians? They were maybe 20, 30, 40 miles from you.
Probably 40.
Yeah.
But
They were coming from the east then,
yep.
going west.
Hmm.
So that when you started marching, then you started marching west then.
Yeah, we marched west, and after the first night, like I said, we slept on the ground. After that, these hay barns were empty, and it overnight us in it could have been close to 1,000 men, and they were in there about as thick as you could lay down.
In this barn.
In that barn, but there was a lot of old hay and, cushion underneath.
What time of the year was this now? Was snow on the ground or early spring?
That was getting on into, started out in February. I suppose it was March and April.
It was cold at night though, was it?
Yeah, but it wasn't bad when you got in a barn that had walls and stuff.
No.
So I thought that they did about the best they could for us under those.
Were there a number of guards then with you? And
there was World War I guys that they'd put back in uniform that could barely walk. They didn't care which way the sun went or they knew what was going to happen anyway. Things were going from bad to worse.
How many miles did you walk in a day?
Oh, possibly about 15 or, but we walked over 1,500 miles. I put on a brand new pair of shoes that I'd gotten.
1,500 miles? You didn't go in a straight line then? You must
Heavens no, we were going back and forth zigzagging in order to get these barns to sleep in, I suppose.
Yeah.
I walked the heels completely off from my shoes, brand new shoes, on that cobblestone stuff.
You don't remember any cities that you went through or rivers? Did you go to the Elbe River, for example?
Boy, I didn't pay attention.
No.
We just walked.
Just walked. Now, did some of the guys die on the trip, or did they all
Well,
survive
not
pretty
really
well?
that I know of.
But you carried everything you had on you, I suppose, and kept on going.
Yeah.
The Russians were coming behind you?
Well, we didn't hear too much racket until we finally got to, and I should remember where I was liberated, but it was about midway in between Hamburg and Berlin.
Hamburg and Berlin, okay.
Small town. And
That's the northern section of Germany then.
They run into a lieutenant and just 2 Americans. They threw their guns down and turned us over to them. There wasn't a shot fired.
Now, these Americans, they come from the west then, did they?
Yeah.
And you were marching that way too, weren't you?
Yeah, they marched.
How far were the Russians behind you then when you, could you hear them?
Well, just out of earshot, I think, about
Yeah. What happened then when you ran into these Americans? You say that the Germans threw down their guns?
Yeah, these old fellows didn't. They must have had orders to, because like I said, there wasn't a shot fired.
And then you were turned over to these Americans.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Well, that night, we heard on overseas radio that FDR had died.
Right?
Yeah. And, well, they had marched us up, lined up by trees, and they said, 9 of you guys go into this house and find yourself 9 beds. If the civilians aren't out, kick them out.
Germans.
Germans, yeah, those owners are...
You don't remember the name of that town or the area?
No, I don't. Yet I never did keep any log of anything, and right now, you know...
How long were you there then in that place? Well, of course
not too very long before they flew us over to Camp Lucky Strike.
You don't
in
remember where they
France.
flew you from?
No. I know it. We were on a cargo plane.
Yeah.
A 2-prop deal where they flopped down seats on both sides.
Yeah, that's a C-47 or, yeah.
At any rate, we got a buggy ride over there, and
Now, how many were there, Americans were there now in this group that was liberated, that met these
Well,
Americans?
it was... Really, I don't know, because I'm one of the members of our ex-PO had been in the same march, and I didn't know him from Adam's All Fox. Or, you see, there were civilians and prisoners and
Germans?
women and kids and
All mixed up.
all mixed up, and some pushing wheelbarrows and some pulling wagons.
What about food now? How could you eat and sleep and drink water and so on?
Well, there was usually water on the places where they stopped us.
Yeah.
And it seemed like we got about 3 slices of bread a day, and that's what we got. I know one, over the weekend we stayed on a place, and they'd gotten some horse meat. I actually think that horse had dropped dead, because it sure was some tough stuff. Had better teeth than I've got now, but you couldn't eat it if you didn't have fingers. And they cut it up and boiled it for 6-7 hours, and it still didn't get tender. I guess horse meat is tender if you eat good horse meat.
Now, did they fly just the Americans then to Camp Lucky Strike, or how many did they fly?
Well,
What about those Germans and French and civilians and so on? They were left there, I suppose.
Yeah, they segregated us,
Yeah.
you know, and wasn't long before we got over to Camp Lucky Strike, and I think we were there for about 3 weeks. Then
Camp Lucky Strike was a debarkation point there by Le Havre, yeah, where you left there. You went took a ship to the United States.
And they
What happened when you got to Lucky Strike then? Can you remember?
well, they were good to us, really. I mean, they were giving us, I know they'd set up a donut wagon, and one fellow, Royal Red Cross had set it up. He went in the back end of the line, and he ate so many donuts he died from it.
Well, that was easy to die.
Yeah.
Well, how many men were? I was at Camp Lucky Strike. There was about 75,000 when I was there in these tents.
Yeah, we had.
Was it a big tent city when you got there?
Yeah, yeah. They had that in World War I too, I understand.
I see.
Camp Lucky Strike.
Yeah. See, what are those? I noticed just looking here now. What is that medal for that you got hanging there on your coat there?
That is ex-POW.
You got
medal.
that for being a prisoner of war, American prisoner of war
That's
from the
right.
government. Yeah.
It says on it, I guess, that we had honorably been a prisoner.
Now, what about that other thing on your lapel? Is that a
That is
silhouette of the state of Minnesota?
State of Minnesota that we're using for the EXPO. It's kind of unique, I think, in the fact that it's.
Say, after you got to get back to La Harbe now, I mean Camp Lucky Strike, you got on a ship then that took you back to the United States.
Right.
And where'd you get back to Camp Kilmer or something like that again? You don't remember maybe?
No, we landed in Newport News, I think.
Well, you went down there, Virginia.
Yeah.
And then
We didn't see the old gal waving at us when
No.
we came back.
Then what happened then when you got to Newport News?
Well, things went quite rapidly. They, of course, deloused us and more or less looked us over. I think we were issued new uniforms, and then we got put on a train and shipped back home. There was guys from Norton, South Dakota and Minnesota. I've got a list at home. That was your traveling papers. It had probably 100 and some names, and yours was underlined or something like that.
You went to Fort Snelling then, I suppose. Did the train go to Fort Snelling or Twin Cities? Then they debarked there, and then you were perhaps on your own from Fort Snelling to go home.
Yeah, well, I can't even remember being in Fort Snelling.
Well, you may not have been there more than half an hour or so.
We went home.
You took a train home, I suppose.
Train home, yeah.
To Barnesville.
Yes.
I mean, that's where you started.
I don't, a little shady on that, but I know that I had some time in Minneapolis and looked up some of my wife's cousins and stuff. And her sister lived down there. And
Well, you weren't there very long, maybe just a day or so. Or
yeah, it was just barely overnight or something like that. I know that her sister called up home. She couldn't keep her mouth shut. I thought she could have. I was going to be home the next day anyway, but she kind of irritated me slightly.
You were going to surprise them then when you got home.
Well, I thought I would.
Yeah. How was your health when you got out of there?
Well, outside of being run down, I gained the weight back quite quick. Like I had gone from 185 to 128 pounds, but they didn't get the muscles back for many years.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever did get them back like they were before. They disappeared.
Now, how's the government treated you since the war? You were discharged then after World War II, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten a furlough while I was in, so I was home for something like 90 days, and then I was shipped to camp.
Go to California or?
No, I went south into
Arkansas? Little Rock?
Camp Chaffee.
Camp Chaffee. Where's was that? That was Arkansas.
That's Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah. I was discharged.
You went there for discharge.
For discharge, and after that, I guess they gave us some money, and we were on our own to get train fare and go back home again. But no, I cannot say anything else about the Veterans Administration that they have. It took them forever before they started doing anything.
How was your health after you got out for the first, say, 30, 40 years? Pretty good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was.
Say, I see a picture here of some men in uniform now. Is this your unit now? These men in the
At least 21 here were the men that worked on the farm.
They were all prisoners of war.
All prisoners of war.
Americans?
Yes. There's.
How did you get that picture?
A photographer came. I don't know how in heaven's name he did. I can't remember. We must have paid him something.
And
that happened just not too long before we left. And the three
on top there.
On top there, the three of us that walked together.
That is, you were all three in the same camp.
Well, yes, we were. We actually, what happened was that the one here was from my unit, but the one on the other side was a flyboy or paratrooper, and they are both dead and gone. As are the biggest part of those.
Now here's a tag I noticed.
Well, that's the government GI tag.
Yeah. I'll take this off. Maybe they can get it. That's typically called a dog tag in this.
Dog tag, right.
And that.
And the other one there is the.
I'm going to show this one. You can't see this really, but this is the tag that was issued by the Germans.
Ex-prisoner of war.
Well, is there? No, I thought there was a ledge there. That's all right.
Well, I can tell you that it's 20884 on it.
That's the number.
That's the number, and that one there is 37 16 75 36. I'll never forget that.
Now, this. I'm just looking for any other picture here. Yes, well, it really. I'm going to take this off here. Now here was a picture here that when you were given your medal there in the VA in Fargo.
Yep.
You were given the prisoner of war medal there. What is that, a general or?
That's a general there. And
yeah.
There he's pointing out to me my family.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a little emotional.
Well, that could be, yeah.
And
but that's you there in the red cap in those pictures, yeah. Now.
Well, that's a picture of the.
Now I'm going to put this. Can I put this picture up? Here's a picture of. I think this is what you'd call your immediate family. That's that's your. Could you read those people to us? I mean, just for the.
Well, from the far corner.
Far side, yeah. Start there.
That's David, and when he's the oldest boy, and the one next to him is Janet, and then that's my better half, Gene, and the old cripple himself in the middle, and the next one is the oldest daughter. She was 2 years old before I ever saw her.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And her name is Marion and Joe. swell bunch of kids.
Well, you said you talked about this daughter. Now, this is the oldest daughter,
Yes.
and this one here, who's that? Well, that's the.
Well, that's Marion.
Yeah. And that's her husband.
No, that's her brother Joseph.
Well, that's your brother. That's the whole family, immediate family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I got another picture here. Let's see what this is. Well, this is the same one.
We had one here of a big one.
Yeah. I wonder, I can show this one. Is this one here too big maybe to show? No, okay. Here you can grab the other end of it there.
That's enough.
There, set it there.
In-laws and outlaws, sir.
Yeah.
Well,
Pretty hard to read all those off, but they'll know it by the
it's
people that see it, yeah.
great-grandchildren that are with the two of us.
Yeah.
And that was taken just a few hours after I got out of the Merit Care Hospital here this winter, having
Now, you had a pacemaker put in there.
pacemaker
Yeah.
put in, yeah.
Did you have open heart surgery, too? You tell me about...
Yeah, in
some of your-
'91 I had open heart surgery.
Where'd you have that?
Well, that was down in Minneapolis.
Everything turned out fine?
Great.
Yeah.
I have, so far as the heart surgery, have never really had any angina pains or.
Oh.
And some people have nothing but trouble. But
See, I want to show one more picture. Let's take this one down.
let's see. Here.
Let's see.
Oh, I got too much there.
Yeah. I got her now. I got her.
Trying to take this thing too.
Yeah. But I want to show this one here because this is when you have your 50th anniversary, most people they have this picture here of the picture of the wedding picture. And that was says Gus and Jean Pederson, November 27th, 1941. In fact, that's just say 10 days before the war started. That's the wedding picture.
And there we are now.
And there's, yeah, you can set that there, and also, yeah. Well, here's a better one, maybe. This,
Yeah, that was taken.
yeah. Let me put this one up. I think it's a little better picture. That's the so-called current one here, right here. I mean, that was taken in the 50s. How many years have you been married?
Married in
Well, approximately.
41.
41, yeah. Okay. You've been married about 56 years? 50, yeah.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Oh, she's over in the.
What? Oh, yeah. Okay, well, that's on the 50th wedding anniversary. See, then, of course, there's a card that goes with it. So, well, what do you think now, Gus, as to your wartime prisoner of war and so on? How's the world been treating you since when you were in the war and after the war and so on? Have any complaints about anyone, or?
I have no qualms about anything. I think the Lord has been good to me.
Now
I'm thoroughly convinced that the Lord has been good to me.
yeah. I mean, you have no, the people treated you good and the government treated you good?
I have no animosity towards anyone.
No. And what about your prisoner of war experience? What do you think about that? Was it helpful to you? Do you think it made you stronger, or how did it affect you?
I'm quite sure that it changed my whole outlook in life.
Made you have a broader outlook or a stronger outlook?
Well, I certainly wasn't money hungry after I came out of there.
No.
Found out that money won't buy you anything unless there's something to buy.
Yeah.
And, well...
Did you impart those qualities to your children, you feel, too, as best you could?
I think so.
I mean, they turned out...
We've been more than fortunate.
Yeah.
We haven't had any outlaws in the bunch. I think the old man was a worse rascal than any of them.
Now, Barnesville, was that the place where, is that where, in the area where your folks were buried and so on, your grandparents and so on? I mean, that's all been in your area.
We belong to a country church that's...
What kind of a church is that? What religion is that?
It's Lutheran.
Lutheran.
We belong to Gran, which is, it's about 6 miles north of where we live.
Yeah. Have you belonged to that church all the time?
Well, ever since I was about 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
I am very much interested or concerned about going to church. I might add that there was a Lutheran church not too many, well, it probably wasn't over a block away that they had church services on Sunday. And when I was locked in, that taught me a real strong lesson.
Yeah.
It's, I think the proudest moments of my life was when I could walk back up the church steps with my wife and family.
Yeah. That is near Barnesville.
Yeah, it's probably 7 miles from Barnesville. It's a country church, and an old one that is, well, it's not going to be able to continue. It's way over 100 years old, but everybody sold out and somebody else moved in, and they don't want to go to a small church.
Well, what advice do you have to the young people today? What do you think about them as you see them go to school or work or so on, compared to your life when you started out with 4 horses or 8 horses on the farm?
I write an article for my church paper about once a month, and last month I said that I had heard that younger generation was going to the dogs. I think we heard that when we were kids. And I haven't ever seen them go to the dogs. And I think it took this last winter to show you what kind of kids we've got.
Yeah.
That they come out and work for nothing.
Well, that's right. They did a lot of work here, and when the snowstorms, you know, and flood and so on.
Yeah.
They come from all over and worked free and so on.
So I have all kinds of faith.
Yeah.
In the youth.
Sure. Well, that's good. Well, thanks a lot, Gus. Do you have anything else you want to tell us, or?
Well, not really, I guess.
We covered quite an area.
I would say that I am definitely thankful to God, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm a chaplain of our own ex-POW organization, and I'm proud to be their chaplain.
Sure. Well, that's nice. We were glad to have you here, Gus, to tell us your story about your prisoner of war days and what happened before and what happened afterwards.
Well, perhaps if we could have taken this 25 years ago, things would have been more vivid in your memory.
Well, sometimes that's maybe true, but then I think for some reason or other, older people tend to remember back, you know, pretty good. They may not remember what happened last year, but...
I don't know what I'm supposed to do next, but I can remember things that happened a long time ago.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a characteristic of age. Yeah. So that's...
No, I don't know. I would do just exactly what I've done if I had it to do over again.
Well, most people are that way.
I wouldn't change a thing.
No. Well, thanks an awful lot, Gus, and hope you have a nice ride home today. And, you'll get a film here, a TV tape of your discussion here and your visit to take home with you and to show your family. And I know that in years to come they'll treasure that
Oh, yeah.
visit with you. So thanks again an awful lot.
Yeah, thank you for having me.